right. Well, welcome to our April 14th discussion group. This is the second week that we're covering and having a conversation about abortion. So I'm really glad that you're all here and more people are popping on even as we speak. So I'm going to go ahead and start by having Joan lead us in an opening prayer, and then we'll launch into our discussion.
Our loving God, we come before you this evening just thankful to be in your presence. We just ask you to be with each one of us during this discussion tonight. And just, Holy Spirit, just help us to use the right words, to be humble and listen to other people's opinions. You are a God of love, and help us to show that love to each and every one in this group. And we just thank you that we can come together this way, that we can meet, we can share ideas, and that we can do it all in a loving atmosphere, knowing that you are our God and you reign supreme, and we want to follow you and live our lives the way you would have us live. So we just thank you for being here this evening. Just give you praise for who you are and for allowing us to have this time together. And we just ask you to be in every aspect of the evening. And we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mom. There's our posture of humility that we talked about last week. And I thank you that you prayed that about that, Mom, just that we would have the open hearts to hear from each other and from God and the Holy Spirit. Posture of humility and conversation allows both parties to engage honestly and receive what the other person is actually saying. And we talked about this last week, that this is the posture we want to have, even if we disagree with somebody. And that posture of humility is what is going to help us to understand and maybe even move our position, or at least have empathy for the other person. And I don't know that we need to go over these again, but I think the bottom line here is just to be respectful and to give each other space to speak and have clarity to learn. Yeah. So here we are, folks. Abortion, the pro-life, pro-choice discussion, which is how I have phrased it up until this point. We might change the way we phrase that for future meetings, but last week we heard from Joan, and thank you again for that really open and honest sharing. It was very well done. And I've had several people who've watched the recording and told me how great it was and they loved it. So that is now out on YouTube for anybody who wants to watch it. So
we're selling subscriptions now.
Selling subscriptions. So you never know who might stumble onto it and find that to be encouraging to them. So thank you again, Mom. So the pro-life / pro-choice discussion. How can we best talk about this? I will be honest and just say that I've been praying about this, because thinking about how to lead this discussion in a way that is honest, loving, allows for variance of opinions, because it can be a very emotionally charged discussion, has been really heavy on me. So in praying about it, and if you know anything about me, you know that I like to present all views and allow people to have the option to pray it through and land where God leads them to land. It doesn't mean that I support all of them. It just means that I want us to be educated and to know what we're speaking of, so that when you do have conversations with people, you'll be more educated on maybe what the other person is thinking, because some of the worst arguments are when you assume you know where the other person stands or what they're thinking. So obviously we go back to 1 Corinthians 13, and we read this last week, just about how do we best discuss it is with all of the definition of love, which of course most of you know this. So I promised you definitions last week, so hang on, buckle up, put your shoulder straps on, because I'm going to whip through these really fast, but I feel like just in case there's somebody here who doesn't know the definition of some things, instead of being embarrassed, we will have gone through them and we can always go back to them. So starting with A. So abortion, what does abortion mean? So I tried to find a couple sites that had, neutral, objective types of definitions. Maybe you'll find something that sounds slanted one way or the other, and I apologize for that. But abortion is the failure for something to reach full maturity, fulfillment or maturity. Like you abort the mission, right? So that's where that term comes from. So in this regard, medically speaking, it's the interruption of pregnancy before the viability of the unborn fetus at the request of the woman or the doctor. An I don't even say this right. Mom, can you help me with this?
Abortifacient.
Abortifacient. Okay. An agent whose sole or primary purpose is to cause abortions. So these are agents such as low dose birth control pills, many pills, morning after pills, Norplant, Depo-Provera, true abortion pills such as RU486, and intrauterine devices or IUDs. I need to slow down. Abortion rate, that's the number of abortions obtained by women of childbearing age, usually 15 to 44 over a given period of time. Now that statistics could change, like it might just be all women and all, like abortion rate could be the number of abortions of all pregnancies, I'm not sure. But this was just one definition I found. The rate is usually expressed in terms of abortions per 1,000 women annually. Accidental abortion is an unintentional abortion, usually termed a miscarriage, caused by a fall, a blow, or other accidental injury. And I didn't include every definition, I just picked out some that I thought would be helpful. Conception is the creation of a new human life through the union of egg and sperm, sometimes referred to as fertilization, not to be confused with implantation or nidation. Contraception, the practice of using drugs basically to prevent pregnancy. Criminal abortion, an abortion performed illegally. This definition varies widely all over the world. Oh, and I have sanctity of life out of order here, I apologize. Sanctity of life is that the belief that human life is sacred, and we will talk about this specifically, that human life is sacred, Imago Dei, which means made in the image of God, that everyone has a right to life, which should be protected and valued at every stage. Bless you.
Thank you.
Oops, did I go back? The next one, these three are really hard for me to read because they describe types of abortions. So I will do my best. D&C, which is dilation and curettage. I think that's how you say it. This is the most common abortion procedure. It's also used for completing or checking a miscarriage. It consists of scraping the walls of the uterus with a knife-edged spoon-shaped instrument. And there's other descriptions, but that's the basics. So, dilation and evacuation, a D&E, is an abortion procedure by which the preborn baby is cut or torn apart by a sharp instrument and withdrawn from the uterus. And then this one's really tough. The D&X, or dilation and extraction, a relatively new method of abortion. It's becoming more popular, used from 24 to 36 weeks. And when I say more popular, I don't mean that the majority of abortions are being used, like, because
it's being done inside instead of outside.
Right. So it involves delivering all of the preborn baby except the head, and then they punch a hole in the back of the baby's head and suck out the brains in order to ease delivery, but to guarantee the baby's death before the baby comes out, and then it becomes murder, right? So this is actually more rare than this definition makes it sound, but it is actually done in late-term abortion. So, okay, on to early abortion, usually defined as a miscarriage, a natural expulsion. The part here I wanted to just focus on is it's usually they consider less than 22 weeks of gestation to call it an early abortion. And abortion, that might be confusing to you because I never think of miscarriage as abortion, but when you think of abortion as aborting the mission, then it makes sense.
The Latin word means miscarriage. So.
Yeah. So we would usually say up to 22 weeks is early abortion, and then after that is I forget, maybe we just call it a miscarriage. Elective abortion is generally defined as any abortion done for any reason other than to save the mother's life. An embryo is a preborn baby in the early stages of development that are characterized by laying down of fundamental tissue, cell division that occurs immediately after fertilization and that continues until the cells begin to segregate and specialize and develop into a blastocyst, and the initial formation of organs and organ systems, usually taken to mean the preborn child before 8 weeks. So this is where Ariana is, in case you know that Ariana is pregnant. She has a little embryo in her belly, in her womb. Fetus, the term literally meaning little one in Latin, referring to the preborn baby after 8 weeks gestation. So that will be the next stage for Ariana. Her embryo turns into a fetus. Gestation, the time period between conception and birth.
Cooking period.
Yeah, cooking period, usually 9 months. Implantation, the exact point in time when the developing blastocyst anchors itself in the uterine wall, or in the case of ectopic pregnancies, in the fallopian tube or somewhere else in the woman's abdomen. And I would just add that, well, no, they cover it down here, but implantation, some people believe that, well, the abortifacients will keep the fertilized egg from implanting into the uterus. So it's been fertilized, but it doesn't ever plant it. So it just comes out. Incomplete abortion is an abortion in which portions of the unborn child or the placenta remain in the uterus for an appreciable period of time after miscarriage or abortion. An induced abortion is an intentional abortion caused by drugs, surgery, or other mechanical means. An intrauterine device, IUD, this device is inserted into the uterus for the purpose of preventing pregnancy. Although the exact mode of action isn't known, it's believed they prevent pregnancy by irritating the uterine wall and preventing implantation, what I was just talking about a minute ago. And therefore, IUDs are an abortifacient. A justifiable abortion is a term used in the narrow sense by medical authorities to describe an abortion performed to save the life of the mother, used by other pro-abort persons to describe an abortion for whatever reason. So there's a little bit of a slant there. Miscarriage, the natural and unintentional loss of a preborn child. I think we all know what miscarriage is, either natural or spontaneous. Missed abortion is when an abortion by the fetus dies, abortion by which the fetus dies, but is retained in the uterus for a significant period of time. Probably won't even refer to that again. Morbidity, morning after pill is specifically designed to cause early abortion by preventing implantation or nidation. Usually contains an extremely large dose of estrogen within 24 to 72 hours after intercourse. Natural abortion is an abortion not artificially induced, like a miscarriage. Natural family planning is the avoidance of artificial contraceptive means by using the female's body's natural fertility sign to avoid or achieve pregnancy. I think most of you know what that is. Neonate is a newborn baby less than a month old, and Norplant is something that's an abortifacient inserted into the arm of a woman inside 6 matchstick-sized silicone rubber rods. And the primary active ingredient is a low dosage progesterone, and it keeps the baby, it keeps the pregnancy from implanting and taking place. Post-abortion syndrome is basically regret caused by having an abortion. Pre-embryo is an entirely unscientific and misleading term created by pro-abortionists specifically for the purposes of dehumanizing the preborn and obscuring the facts in the debate over abortifacients. So that's another kind of maybe a trigger for some. Pregnancy reduction, an abortion performed to reduce a multiple pregnancy to only 1 or 2 preborn babies. Prematurity usually refers to babies born before 9 months. Let's see. Trimester, I think you all know what that. The first trimester is 1 to 12 weeks. Second is 13 to 24. And the third is usually 25 weeks to the end of the pregnancy. Vacuum aspiration, we're getting close. Z is in sight. Vacuum aspiration is the induction of abortion using a powerful suction machine to remove the developing preborn baby, the amniotic sac, and the placenta from the uterus. And viability refers to the point in which time the fetus is capable of surviving outside the womb with or without heroic measures. The definition of viability varies from place to place and depends strongly on the mother's health, but is now 90% certain that at 24 weeks in the United States, a baby can be born and live to tell about it. And the zygote, the last term, the fertilized ovum or individual created by the fusion of the father's sperm cell and the mother's egg cell. This is the earliest stage of human individual development. It's also defined as the diploid cell resulting from the fusion of a sperm cell and an ovum. Okay, I know there's a lot of reading and I could have had a bunch of people read, but I just wanted to whip through it just so that we have our terms and we can go back to them. So what I decided to do, I could, obviously couldn't find anything that I could just copy and paste in here. I created our own chart.
Is that surprising?
That is not, shouldn't be surprising.
Anyone?
I'm calling it the abortion conversation, and I am open to edits. So if you think that something on here should be changed to a different term, please have at it. I really want to do this as a community, so you can unmute your mics and jump in.
Additionally, we did, in the reading we did, one individual said that there are probably 5 positions, but that individual wasn't real clear or give a name to each one. So we just did 4, but if we, through our conversation, feel like there's another category, even though it's not really good to categorize someone, we are all on a spectrum, and it's good to kind of know where we are and how we're moving and shifting.
Yeah.
So if we need to add a 5th one, if it comes to make sense, then we will. We're not just stuck to these 4.
Correct. So the best I could categorize this, starting on the left, is the preborn life, criminalization position. So, some would just, okay, so let me just preface this by saying, I didn't want to just put pro-life and pro-choice in a binary way on a chart, because I feel like it's much more nuanced than that. And from all the reading and everything I've been doing, I just felt like that would be unfair. So I tried to use other words that include life and choice, but aren't just strictly pro-life, pro-choice, because some people are pro-life, but they're anti-abortion. So where do they fit in, right? Okay, so I'm sorry, pro-choice and anti-abortion, yeah, which you wouldn't usually think of.
And I would add, some people make up, what do you mean criminalization? Well, if we made abortion illegal, it would be a crime to get an abortion. So that's pro-criminalization, or making abortions, and I guess in the extreme, all abortions illegal.
Yes.
So it would be a crime for the woman and the doctor.
Most likely,
Sure.
if you,
We can clarify that.
In those circumstances, I guess it would be. If the federal law says you cannot perform an abortion, which means you can't legally get one, then the doctor would definitely be in trouble as well, huh?
I will add that as a sub point to this when we get to that slide, because that's a good point. I didn't have anything on there.
See, because there could be in between someone who the doctor is at fault, but not the woman.
Okay. Yeah, I could do and that would cover it. Because obviously this is a spectrum, and you may not fit exactly in one box, but you might kind of be in between two sides. So so preborn life, right? That's pro-life for the baby. Pro-criminalization, meaning it needs to be illegal. So that would, another way would be anti-abortion or rights of the unborn or primary. The next one over would be the preborn life, anti-criminalization. So this one is saying it shouldn't be illegal, or maybe not illegal across the board. Maybe only late-term abortions are illegal, or like you said, Joan, only the doctor is prosecuted. But overall, more against criminalization and not just a black and white cutoff point and saying all abortions illegal, everybody goes to jail, right? The Then the next one over is pro women's choice and preborn life. They care about both lives and they're trying to find a way to navigate that. So they're anti-criminalization because they are behind the rights of the woman. I shouldn't say rights, that sounds wrong. Maybe the health and the situation, the circumstances of the female that's going in for the abortion. So their desire in this column is to see abortion rates reduced. That's the number one thing. That's above criminalization. It is the belief that criminalization does not actually reduce abortion rates. Then the next one over, and this is the far opposite of the other. So you can call them on the ends, you could call those the purists of pro-life and pro-choice. This is pro-woman's choice over the preborn life. So you might say abortions for convenience, or although I don't think very many people do that. I don't know for sure, but this would be where they would fit if they used abortion as a form of birth control. Pro-choice, pro-abortion and women's rights are primary. It's not that they don't value life, but they put the woman's life over the unborn child's life. Okay, so any questions about these four? And I'm totally open to edits, like I said before. Yes.
Well, on the far right, there's also abortions, sex choice abortions, aborting babies who have Down syndrome. So
Yeah,
I don't know where that fits. But
yeah, okay, I'll add that on now.
Elective, not for the health of the mother, but elective.
Selective. Like,
selective. Yes.
I want a certain type of child. I won't take a disabled child. Yeah, you're right, Mom. That's a good one. I'll add that to I have drop down points. So, whoops. There we go. Okay, going back to the far left. Some of the descriptions of this column would be sanctity of life, right? Made in the image of God, Imago Dei. Life begins at conception, when that sperm fertilizes the egg before it's even implanted. That is the beginning of life. Absolutely against abortion, anti-abortion. The rights of the unborn are primary above the woman's, and abortion should be illegal. So obviously there's some nuances there. If a woman was about to die, you'd have to make a judgment call. And I don't know that, I think that would be taken into consideration here. What did I want to add here? The doctor, is this where I wanted to add or was that in the next column, Joan? Was that?
Well, it says pro-criminalization. So who are the criminals?
Okay.
In the left column would be doctor and patient, or doctor and
oops, I didn't mean to.
Woman.
Okay. So I guess I could put, maybe that would be the second column, where it says criminalization for abortion isn't the best solution. Well, I don't know. I don't know if it matters. Okay. I'll just put either or. Let's see, prosecution, is that the word? Either / or the mother. Sorry, that's probably really loud clicking right next to the microphone. Mother or doctor. Feel free to jump in if you think you've got a better way to word this. Either mother or doctor are prosecuted. Okay. Does that work, Mom?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let me see if I can go back to making this big. Okay, so the second column, I have also believe in the sanctity of life, image of God, made in the image of God. Life begins at conception and or when the fetus can live outside the mother's womb. Or maybe you would put implantation here as a dividing line. They're anti-abortion. They're not for abortion. That's not they're not picketing for abortion. They would rather not see abortion, but what they don't want to see is the criminalization for abortion. They don't believe that's the best solution to reduce abortions. And then the next one, sanctity of life. Life begins when the fetus can live outside the mother's womb. So I think we said in the United States that viability is 22 weeks. Is that what that said? Is that generally what you,
Mm,
22 weeks? That's what that definition that I had found said, but maybe Mark found something in his research he can share later. No?
Not for that
Mm.
particularly. I mean, it's
Um,
probably in this pile.
do not like or promote abortion. So not necessarily pro-abortion, but they believe the rights of the mother are equal to the rights of the life of the unborn child. And so it's more nuanced than that. And criminalization for abortion is not the best solution to reduce abortions. So I think in this column, it would be the people that are trying other ways to go about coming alongside women instead of just, criminalizing them and prosecuting them. And then the last column, may or may not support sanctity of life. Life begins when the fetus can live outside the mother's womb or when a mother is full term. Support the right to an abortion. Rights of mothers are above the right of the unborn to live. And criminalization for abortion is wrong and oppressive. So this is just what I put together, but I'm totally willing to move things around and massage it. I do want Mark to speak a little bit to the history of abortion.
Not the history of abortion per se.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll let you speak. You call it what you will. I'm gonna unshare my screen so they can see your face. Before I leave this screen, because we're gonna come back to this again, obviously, and we're gonna keep adding things to it and working through and maybe discussing each one in more detail. Is there anything that anybody needs to add or, okay, so I'm gonna throw it over to Mark. You wanna put your speaker on?
No, I don't have to.
Oh, that's right.
there.
That's right. You don't have to.
I did want to share a little bit, but I almost want to say it's premature. Ann and I put a lot into these meetings and we do a lot of reading, but not near as much as we want to or like to. Life catches up to us and we find ourselves not having as much time. But I just found some interesting things, not so much about the history of abortion, but kind of the history of the anti-abortion movement within the Christian church. One of the beginnings of it, which I found interesting, and was correct. Most resources that you find will say viability is at 22 weeks and after. A lot of places will say what age is a fetus viable outside the womb? It's 24 to 28 weeks. So 22 weeks viability probably would be the earliest in that range, 22 weeks. A couple of statistics, and I might speak to this in a little bit, but finding after finding shows 91% of the abortions, and I think this is a 2018 or a 2019 figure, 91% of the abortions that are done in the United States are 13 weeks and sooner. So well before the viability age, and 65 to 66%. I think in 2011 it was 65%. Just 2 years ago it was 66% of the abortions are done 8 weeks or sooner. So and only 1.4%. And I think this is a 2011 figure. It could be more or less, I don't know, but probably still right around the 1% range is done in what's called late term abortion or post 22 weeks, post viability. Only 1%, 1 to 1.4% of the abortions that are done are.
What year were these stats from? 2011, did you say?
No, 2016.
2016. Okay.
One of them was a 2011. The
Okay.
1.4%, I think, was a 2011 figure.
Joan, is this what you've heard or been trained in when in the pregnancy care, or is it close?
I don't remember percentages that well, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically the majority are done once they find out they're pregnant.
Over half, yeah.
Yeah, so they find out they're pregnant and they have to make a decision. and then
Ariana found out she was pregnant at
At
5
5
weeks.
Yeah.
5 weeks.
Yeah, and at 6 weeks, pretty hard to see the heartbeat.
Okay.
Yeah,
So for an ultrasound, if they can't, the gal wants to know, then they would do a uterine ultrasound, and that gives a clear picture. But you get into 7 weeks, then usually you can see the heartbeat by then. And 8 weeks for sure.
For sure. Okay.
So when you say see, does that mean with an ultrasound, or do you
On the ultrasound,
Okay.
yes.
Can you hear a heartbeat?
Well,
Before that?
our ultrasound machines do not have sound, so
Okay.
Okay.
So
but,
you
you can see the heart beating.
okay.
And like I say, the baby's heartbeat is twice the rate of the mother's.
Yeah. Whew, that's amazing.
150, anywhere up to 200 is.
Yeah, Carol, you have a question?
Just a comment. One of the statistics I came up with said that the abortion past 20 weeks, there's scientific evidence that shows the baby is capable of feeling extreme pain during the abortion procedure.
Oh, yeah.
And that is a question that Joan had. She sent some
yeah.
questions, and that's one of them. And when does the unborn baby feel pain? You use the term extreme pain,
That's
Carol.
what it said.
Yeah, and I wonder if it isn't earlier that the fetus, at that point, the fetus can feel pain even before then. It's just interesting they use the term extreme pain as opposed to just when the baby can begin to feel pain. I didn't do research into that sector of it.
And if viability is 22 weeks, that would make sense. Like at 22 weeks, they could actually be born and survive. Okay. Thank you, Carol. Appreciate that.
Just a little bit more information in the reading I did, some things that kind of stuck out at me because it is interesting to kind of know the history of abortion or the acceptability of it, the frequency of it. I guess you could say back in the early days in the founding of our country, but specifically in the 1700s, in the early 1800s, abortion was not unheard of. And sometimes it was, especially if a mother already had a lot of children and there was a lot of poverty in the picture, it was definitely an option. The way they termed it as far as morally or ethically was, it was most likely okay to have an abortion before what they termed the quickening. In other words, before you could feel the baby move. And I'm not sure, it didn't go into any more detail as to when you can actually begin to feel a baby move, but it was considered okay and not necessarily questioned to have an abortion before that time. And of course, I don't know if there was a standard number of weeks that became known that before a baby would move, or they would just hope they had the abortion before they felt the baby move. I'm not sure, but
Carol had her hand up.
yeah, it was not unusual for abortions to take place hundreds and hundreds
Usually
of years.
it's around 5 months.
5 months, okay.
You have a good memory. Like, when was that?
No, that wasn't just for me. That came.
Quickening. So
Yeah.
Well, 5 months would almost equal 20 weeks.
Oh yeah, that's interesting.
Right, yeah, it's 20 weeks.
That's interesting.
5.5 months.
And of course, they didn't have ultrasounds back then, or and did they even have stethoscopes to listen to the heartbeat? I'm not sure.
And then they put a cup with a string on the can with the string.
Okay.
And I just want to speak a little bit to, and maybe Joan and Carol are sages among us, can speak to this too, but as late as the early 70s, when evangelicals actually widely supported abortion rights in the 60s and 70s. It's around the 60s and 70s, and certainly by the 70s, there was a switch. It was kind of a undulating movement from being okay with abortions or supporting abortion rights to becoming anti-abortion for the Christian or Christian religious movement. But even as late as the early 70s, evangelicals widely supported abortion rights, including some well-known Southern Baptists. And it's mainly because of the way they defined when life began. And of course, things have shifted scientifically, even since the 70s. It may seem like from here back to the 70s is a short period, but it's actually what, 30 years? I mean, 40 years.
No,
They would,
60.
it was widely thought that life began when you took your first breath. And that's based on Genesis 2:7.
Yeah.
So there was a point where even Christians would say, well, if the baby hasn't taken its first breath, it's not really alive, so you're not really killing it. And of course, we know things have shifted since then. It is interesting when the abortion movement became politicized and how that came about. And I don't have the research right in front of my face. So I will just go by memory, which is a dangerous thing. But it's probably better that I don't have it, because I don't think I'll get anything wrong. It's just I may leave some stuff out. In the 50s and 60s, during the time of segregation in schools, or the beginning of desegregation in schools, there were still a lot of people, Protestant Christians and Catholics, who wanted their kids to still be in an all-white school, to be in a segregated school. So they started establishing and sending their kids to all-white private schools. They were called, in the vernacular, segregation academies. And because they were doing that, the government was threatening to take away their tax-exempt status, because they were getting tax exemption, but yet they were basically still being racist or being segregationists, and that was not good. So Protestant and Catholic groups, Christian coalitions, came together to find out how they could fight to keep their tax exempt status, and they knew by using this segregation platform it wouldn't go very far. So a gentleman named Weyrich, I think it's Weyrich, I can't remember his first name, Weyrich seized the opportunity to use something else to rally these Christian groups, the Protestant and the Catholics, together to keep their nonprofit status. And that platform was abortion or pro-life. And that became the new banner by which they came together to keep their tax-exempt status. And they enlisted people like Francis Schaeffer and a few others, some well-known Christians, into their movement. And that's kind of where the current Christian anti-abortion movement birthed from. Now, of course, there were probably been people, Christians, well before that, that did not believe in abortion and believed in pro-life. But that's kind of the nucleus of what it looks like now as far as politically is concerned.
That was
where
in the
it started, 50s and 60s, late 60s, yeah. So I thought that was pretty fascinating.
Okay, I'll let people watch the recording to get all that. I didn't type all that up. So is there anything else you wanted to?
No, the gentleman's
Okay.
name was Paul Weyrich, Weyrich, yeah.
Paul, W spelled again?
Weyrich, or Weyrich, Weyrich.
Very rich. Okay. right, put that in the chat room. Okay. Let me go back to the screen. And then I also wanted to read a number of questions that have come up that in our remaining 18 minutes, we maybe can talk about some of them and figure out where they kind of fit in here. So these were submitted by some of you, so I thank you for that. What does it mean to be true? What does it truly mean to be pro-life? Is pro-life allowing somebody to be born or valuing all life? If we value human life, then what are we doing to care for the mothers and children who are born? When does life begin? This is an issue beyond women's rights, and it's about human rights. Many Christians are pro-birth, but not pro-life because they're pro-guns, pro-death penalty, and pro-war. So that's a whole discussion in itself, getting into the political side of things. Should people's tax dollars go to support Planned Parenthood? What choices do pro-choice abortion clinics offer? I mean, these are honest questions. Should abortion pills be sold over the internet and by telemedicine calls? You know, without a doctor talking to the person. When does the unborn baby feel pain? We talked about that a little bit. What is considered danger to the pregnant woman's life? Because we've heard of that, like, I'm against abortion except if the woman's life is in danger, right? Yeah. How much real health care does Planned Parenthood provide for the pregnant woman? How many mammograms, etc.? What quality birth control in both condoms and pills does Planned Parenthood provide? How many adoption referrals does Planned Parenthood make compared to the number of abortions they do? Should abortion be the way to reduce the world's population? What are the negative results of this practice? As followers of Jesus, we have championed the idea of pro-life and legislating our beliefs, but if the call of pure religion is to take care of the widows and orphans, how well are we doing? Are we expecting the government to do the thing that we as the church are supposed to do? Next, as pro-lifers, how can you legislate against it if you won't step in and help the women bear the responsibility? In order to be pro-choice, there have to be choices, and abortion has to be on the table. The tree of life was in the garden, and so God has always given us a choice. That's just a comment, that's not a question. Rights are not the same thing as morality. You have rights, you have the rights to make the wrong choice. So this kind of gets into a lot of the nuances of, we all value human life and maybe even believe that it all begins at conception, but what's the best course of action to reduce the number of abortions that are out there? And a lot of people believe that one of the best ways to be pro-life is to add more, to make healthcare more accessible and make contraception more accessible so that there are less lives being taken. I hope that makes sense. To that defense, no matter what you think about presidents and politics, abortions went way down during Obama. And part of that was because he made a lot of actions toward getting healthcare for a lot of people who were uninsured. And so part of that, in the research I was reading, they were saying that when people don't have healthcare, they don't go in and get ultrasounds early enough. So they end up having later term abortions because they don't have adequate healthcare, or they don't even go in and get contraception. And this is married people, single people, teenagers, whatever. Because I was looking at the statistics, during Obama's 8 years, teen pregnancies were cut in more than by half, and abortions were cut, I think, by about the same amount. I don't have the stats in front of me, but so I guess the question, one question I would just throw out there, and maybe we can chew on this for a few minutes before we close, and that is criminalizing abortion going to cut the number of dead babies, if I want to say it that way, ending of life, or is there another way, or is the point to have less lives taken and have more pro-life actions taken toward the mother and the child so that everybody's flourishing more? Now, and I'm speaking more toward the middle two columns, which I think is where the majority of people lie. I personally don't know of anybody who just goes out willy-nilly and drops $500 for an abortion as a form of birth control. I mean, I'm sure there are people that do it, but most people I know believe in life and they want to do the right thing. They just get stuck in really bad situations, like, you know, a 14-year-old girl who grows up in Detroit and has no options, no family, no money, and the only way out is to protect herself, and she aborts her baby, but you know, early on when it's in her mind just some cells together, maybe he doesn't even have a heartbeat yet. I think that's more what you see happening than the other, but I'm not advocating for anything. I'm just trying to explain it and understand it. So, but I am left with a question, and that is, the more I've dug into this, the more I realize it's not black and white, that sometimes the criminalization of it and taking away the choice actually creates more abortions. As right before Roe v. Wade, there were more abortions than, how do I say that? There were more abortions right before Roe v. Wade than there were even, I think, a couple of years ago, because
It spiked.
it spikes.
Well, it's. I'm trying to find the graphic. It spiked after Roe v. Wade for about 10 years, but
and then it dropped.
Yeah, pre Roe v. Wade was high, but then it started.
Started to decline. Yeah. So
I'm looking for the graphic.
So I'm open to any research you've done, thoughts you've had. I'll go ahead and close this so I can see your faces. And because this is it's a big topic, and I'm definitely in support of life, and I'm definitely in support of the life of the mother and the child. So I want to know what the best stance is to have on this. And, you know, I really don't have a decision. I've not made a decision. I mean, I've always thought I was just anti-abortion, which I am. I don't think abortion's a great option. But my question is, what do I vote for? What do I stand up for in order to make that actually happen the most? You know, and sometimes I wonder if maybe voting a certain way can actually increase abortions. So throwing that out there, I'm going to stop talking and see if anybody wants to say anything. So
yeah, we've kind
of, it's kind of like that in the beginnings of these conversations. So Sierra, are you going to say something?
Yeah. I've done a lot of reading about this issue. Well, my direct answer to your direct question is no, because it never has. Criminalizing abortion has never worked in any country, in any context, in reducing the amount of abortions. And because much like things like marijuana or harder drugs, anytime you criminalize something, what it ends up doing is preying on people of color and people in poorer communities, and not actually not actually taking away the harm that's done. It's actually adding more harm whenever whenever something is just blindly criminalized. I also think if we're discussing this topic, to better understand it as how we should go about it as people who follow Christ, I think that one thing that we have to reckon with is the level of shame that our community has inflicted on young women, older women, who has ever been faced with the decision to follow through with a pregnancy or abort the pregnancy, because we made it. No matter how much we say we love everyone and we never judge, when I'll tell it. When I got pregnant unexpectedly, before Patrick and I started dating, it was only about a few weeks that I was dealing with the stress of that kind of decision, and I ended up having a miscarriage, so I didn't have to make the decision. But those 2 weeks that I was dealing with that, it was traumatic. It was psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually traumatic. And not even necessarily because of the potential of being a single mom or having to deal with the fetus's father or anything like that, or any of those future circumstances. It was because I think I knew what I truly wanted to do and what I needed to do, but I was so terrified of the shame that I would live with if I ever needed to retell my story or this or that. And now I've grown and matured and gone through a lot of therapy and things like that. So as a grown woman in a stable, loving marriage, even I have to, even I can be faced with a decision whether to follow through with a pregnancy or not. And I have to know what I'm comfortable with, and I have to know what I want for my future, and I have to, and the fact that I am a white passing, semi-middle class, very educated, I have a lot more privileges in making that decision than a lot of women out there, and so it's so I'm centering all of my ideas about abortion on the woman, and I'm rambling and I'm jumping from thing to thing, so I apologize. But I think here I am back on track. The shame thing. It's the narrative we tell when talking about abortion has got to be a lot more caring and recognizing the trauma that is being pregnant and giving birth, whether it was something a woman wanted and planned for and went after, or if it was unexpected or just in messy situations. Being pregnant and giving birth is very traumatic. And if a woman doesn't want to go through that, they should not have to. There was some talk earlier about pain, and at what point does the baby feel pain? The mother is also feeling pain. The woman carrying the child is also feeling pain. During pregnancy, during labor, postnatal, And the message that we send as Christians on all spectrums of Christianity, centering motherhood as like the ultimate calling of a woman, and giving birth to a child as something a woman should be solely proud of, and has created a lot of narratives that leave women shameful if they can't get pregnant, they miscarry a lot, if they choose to have an abortion, because their whole personhood, their whole value, especially in the Christian community, is placed on motherhood, is placed on giving birth. And we tell women who choose to follow through with a pregnancy that they're such a strong woman, and they are. But women who make other choices are also strong. Any choice that a woman makes that is best for their mental health, their spiritual health, their stability in life, all of that makes a strong woman. And what we do is we put women in categories based on the choices that they make that are best for their lives, and it's causing more harm than the good that we set out to do. So yeah, there's my rant. Sorry for this jumble.
Well, can I just say thank you for being so vulnerable and honest with us, and just giving us a way of thinking about things. We want to, we need to hear all sides of this, and we don't even have anyone really in this group that isn't privileged in that sense. We don't have the, I listened to one young gal talk. She didn't even know that there was an option. Like, she grew up in a very, very poor situation, and she had no options. There was no family to fall back on to raise her baby. And she was 16, and she was a person of color, and it just seems like she had no way to care for a baby. So that was her only option. And the shame and the guilt and all that stuff that's left in the wake of that, and I know last week, my mom talked about the shame and the guilt of being pregnant in the 60s with a baby, and not even being able to talk about it, never ever speaking of that pregnancy again. And her parents were telling the neighbors that the baby died. I mean, that's traumatic. And that wasn't just the church, although she was Catholic. That was society. All of society was kind of like that. She had no option to even raise that baby by herself. It wasn't even an option. So there is a lot of shame, and I think, maybe as you look at those columns, after listening to Sarah, you might think, well, I need to be in a column where both parties' rights are looked after, because the woman is experiencing pain, emotional, physical, as well as the baby. So thank you for bringing that to the table. I mean, obviously, the hard part, on the flip side of that, would be the ending of of potential life. And that's a hard thing for people to let go of and wrap their mind around, So I tend to look at the solutions of how do we help, how do we help? One way to help is to kind of remove some of the stigma and allow, like, if somebody at Cornerstone was pregnant, would they feel comfortable coming to us and saying, I'm trying to decide what to do? Or would they just be so ashamed they would just go do it in secrecy and hide it? That's a question that we have to kind of grapple with and say, what kind of community are we creating? And this isn't the unpardonable sin, by the way. I mean, how many Christians have gone into war and shot people and killed them? I mean, so yes, life and death is important, but God's got all of it caught up in his bosom, you know. I believe that firmly. Okay, I'm open for any other comments. And yes, Joan?
Well, I think education would be helpful. And as Sierra talked about compassion, pregnancy centers, they're all over the country. And that is where we show compassion and love, and we don't judge. And we offer true choice. We tell the girl all the choices she has, and
Amen.
give her
Thank you, Lauren.
information
That was beautiful.
and
Thank you,
educate her
Lauren.
so she can make
Thank you
the
all.
right
And thank you all
decision,
for
and
as,
help her to
Lauren
realize
said in
that
prayer,
there
just
is
for being
support
that
in the
safe
community,
place.
and we connect her
It's a good
with
discussion,
agencies that
and
can help with that. And
we
like
will
I say, we
talk forward in the
provide
future.
clothes
So
and diapers and
I'll stop recording. And hope you
counseling
come back.
throughout her pregnancy. And so I think that's where it lies, in helping to give people the information they need, and to show them that love and compassion and non-judgmental. In fact, we have clients that say, they just feel that love when they come in the center, and they thank us and they write comments afterwards that nobody judged me. I wasn't judged. They accepted me for, where I was in my decision making. And I think that's one of the big answers. And supporting the pregnancy centers, and helping them to do what they can do.
And I don't know that all pregnancy centers have that same acceptance and non-judgmental attitude. I sure hope they do,
Well,
because
the ones we've dealt with.
yeah. And I'm so glad that you're part of that, because I mean, you're in volunteering there, you're doing more for helping prevent abortion than I am, I mean, and I'll just throw this out there for what it's worth. The women that come into your clinic, where you're able to show them compassion, they have a choice. They have the freedom to choose. And that is where our country stands right now.
We don't judge them if they make
Right.
that choice, whatever choice they make. But I haven't been there for a whole year now.
Right.
And it's very difficult not being able to, I don't know when I'll be able to go back, or if I will at this point. But I had 10 years of doing that, and it was very rewarding. And CareNet is a group that we belong to. Our pregnancy center does, and a lot of centers do. And they are a Christian, organization, and they send the training materials, and they, so we work under their, their umbrella sort of. And I don't know about all the pregnancy centers, around the country. I just know that the ones here in the Denver area, besides Life Choices up north, down south, we have Alternatives Pregnancy Center, and it's Christian based also. And so.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Joan. Anyone else have a comment or a thought, reaction to what Sierra said, or what Joan said, or what Mark or I said?
Yeah, just wanted to mention as well that, beyond education about just the options when a person is pregnant, another thing that's really important is strong education on safe sex, and education about options for birth control, and even like offering those options to people. Because a lot of, kind of historically, a lot of pro-life, thank you for words. A lot of pro-life efforts have also been kind of accompanied by a push for things like abstinence-only education, which does not work. It doesn't
work, but not abstinence education.
Well, okay, yes, abstinence works very well, but it turns out teenagers like to have sex.
Well, I mean,
they will.
statistically,
Abstinence works every time it's tried.
Yeah, I was looking,
Yeah.
I was actually
Right,
looking at
exactly.
the statistics. That's funny. That every time, like when California did the big absence movement, and then it did nothing, and it's not made
Yeah.
it worse. And then when they moved to education and birth control, that kind of thing, abortion rates dropped dramatically. So
Yeah, and so a lot of efforts to continue to offer options for women include funding places like Planned Parenthood that do offer options for birth control. They offer sex education for women who might not otherwise get it. And so, like, yes, they do offer women the choice to terminate a pregnancy, but they also offer all these other services, like we were talking about, like mammograms, pap smears, like women's health services, on top of education and access to birth control, whether it's condoms or pills or whatnot. So a lot of movements that are pro-choice also really support the funding of Planned Parenthood, and when movements try to defund or close these places, it removes access from typically communities that are poorer are the ones that that get affected the most. So like this is such a like not even a single sided issue, because there's so many things that have accompanied it in the way that it has been like even just talked about is so reductive, right? And so like just not, it's not holistic in the way that people talk about it a lot. It just comes down to like pro-life versus pro-choice, and like it's not those both of those terms are not capturing the whole of what
that side.
right, exactly, or the whole of what people are fighting for, basically. So
yeah.
I also think some like psychological or emotional education as well, and this comes from like parenting, or of course it can't come from a clinic solely, or more investment in mental health, because what a lot of times what leads to unwanted pregnancies are women who don't know how to choose the right partner, who have traumas from their past, and so they make choices about their sex life, about their choices about sex, based off of trauma, and not and not from like a whole like feeling like a whole person, and knowing where their boundaries are and what they want. And so I think the church has an opportunity to play a part in making that better as well, in the ways that we teach things regarding sex, and not just talking about purity, but also teaching young men and young women how to be in relationship with one another, how to understand when you are being abused, how to understand when you're being manipulated, how to understand when your body is being taken advantage of, how to understand how to set boundaries and stick to those boundaries. Like some of those kinds of talks get lost in Christian circles, because we just want people to not have sex until they're married. That's not realistic, and so a lot of young people, or maybe not so young people, still have a lot of skewed, traumatic-centered, shame-centered views of sex and relationships, and it leads to unwanted pregnancies. And I would argue that two things. One, a word that I would use to encompass the right side of the spectrum is anti-unwanted pregnancy. But that's not hot and sexy, you know. You can't put that on a t-shirt. But that's really what the bulk of the most reasonable people out there, working toward efforts on that side of the spectrum is just helping women choose when and how to become pregnant, and that's as someone who almost had that choice not made for me. Like, I know the value and the empowerment that comes with knowing, like, I can choose when and how I become a mother, how long I want to stay just a woman and just a wife, how long, when I want to devote myself to a child in that way. It's such a profound sense of empowerment that not a lot of women get to have. And so people, I'm going to speak for everybody on that side, that is probably the essence of what people on that side of the spectrum, on the right side of that chart, really want. And those choices start from, adolescence and childhood, when you're being parented, when you're being taught by other mentors and leaders. It's just how, like, making choices to better prepare you for the life that you want. You want to be a mother, you want to be a young mother, here's how you do it. If you want, sorry, not going to go into that, but it's not necessary. It's not. Oh, I said two things and I went on a tangent. The second thing was that I would take the term pro-abortion just like off the chart altogether, because I truly believe it doesn't exist at all. Like, no human is pro-abortion, or if there is some depraved person out there who is for terminating pregnancies just for the sake of terminating pregnancies, that those numbers are so small that it doesn't need to be talked about at all. And it kind of it taints the message that everybody else on the right side is truly trying to fight for. So
thank you. And John, I'm gonna go to you next. I will just say that there are some countries like that legislate abortion, like China, and so that is I'm with you on the, as far as in the United States. I would have to agree that most people are not pro-abortion. Joan, go ahead and say yours.
Well, let's leave the talk of Planned Parenthood for another day, because that's another whole issue. But pregnancy centers they have a three-pronged approach. They offer counseling for the woman who's pregnant. They offer post-abortion Bible studies, counseling to help women who have had an abortion and are having trouble dealing with that. But the third prong of that, or the third leg of the stool, is we have counselors that go in the schools and talk to students. They have a group of teenagers that are mentors that go into the schools with the counselors and talk to young people about choices, sexual choices and all of that, everything that Sierra, that you were talking about. And so trying to educate them about, feeling good about who they are and realizing they can put up boundaries on their body. They don't have to just give themselves to anybody and everybody. And just understanding everything, the sexuality that they're dealing with in the teen years. And so that's part of that education, is trying to help the young people to, understand all that.
That reminds me that David requested a copy of the kind of literature. Do you have copies of the literature that you hand out at the pregnancy care center, Mom? Oh.
I don't.
Okay.
I have a bag over there. No, when
I
I
don't have
first
any.
started, I would bring things home and read about them and then take them back.
Take them back.
So I don't have anything.
I can probably get a copy of stuff here. I think
Um,
you just wanted to know what kinds of things you like.
Focus on the Family has great little booklets that we give to, all different aspects of pregnancy decisions. And but there's other groups out there that publish materials, and so you could, look out online, I guess. I don't have.
I know it's 8:17. I'm just going to put one more question in the chat, and that is, can you legislate morality? And that, I think either Patrick or Sierra was asking the question of, can you expect everybody to live under the idea of abstinence before marriage? And I would just say that, like, the majority of our culture is not even they're not even working under those guidelines, that premise. And so the question is, how do you legislate morality? Can you? That's something to chew on between now and next time. We do legislate morality a little bit. I mean, some things are illegal in our country, but and prosecutable. But that's a question I just want to leave you with as we conclude tonight, because this is a really it's an intricate and personal and nuanced topic, and I appreciate the stretching that especially Sierra, that you brought to the conversation tonight, just stretching to think about things. And maybe I want to stray away from the binary idea, and then Patrick alluded to that, like pro-life, pro-choice, binary. Are you on this side or are you on that side? Are you voting this way? Are you voting that way? And I just don't think I'm not sure that that's a responsible way to have the conversation, nor would Jesus probably have the conversation that way. I think looking at each individual person, seeing them, and not just seeing them as a cause or a moral decision, oh, you're a woman, what moral decision did you make with your body? But seeing the person as a person and their humanity, and what would Jesus say and do? So big questions. And obviously that's why we went 20 minutes over, because this is super big. So we'll keep talking about it next week. Please bring, even if you want to just play the devil's advocate and put something out there that you read that maybe you don't even agree with, put it out there so that
devil's advocate in kindness.
In kindness.
Devil's advocate with kindness, I should say.
I mean, yeah, because I think I want to really stretch my brain and think about this in so many different ways that I've never thought about it before. Because I feel like that's how I learn best. So does anybody here feel compelled to close us out in prayer and just pray that he'll keep teaching us and opening our hearts to hear his heartbeat on this this issue? Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah. Loving God, Father, Son, and Spirit, thank you for life. Thank you for creating life. We know life is precious to you. So may we give you our lives in humility and with the desire to know you more, to know you deeper, and to follow a path that is Jesus-like. Thank you for the passion and the absolute care and concern that those on this call have for life, for others. We thank you for that. Open our hearts to understand. Open our minds to know and to learn. and open our souls to hear and to feel and to listen, our ears to listen to others. May we journey together toward peace and harmony and toward your goodness. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 Can I just thank you for being here? It's a conversation that some people just avoid. So I'm really glad that you're here. So thank you. And our meetings wouldn't be the same if you weren't here. So if it was just Mark and I talking to each other, we wouldn't be stretched.
We do that all the time.
Yeah, we talk to each other all the time. So, okay, well, I'll go ahead and stop recording. Please feel free to stay. What'd you say, Carol?
I said, when we were talking about the subjects, there were so many people that thought this was important, and where are they?
Right? I don't know.
A much larger crowd.
Good question. Well, I know they do go online, and I do know that people watch them. So maybe some people just prefer to watch instead of be part of the stretch and pull and that kind of thing. So I will go ahead and stop recording, and hopefully we will be back next week and continue our conversation.